Ready?
Ready.
Set. Go!
East Coast road trip!
Yeah. Welcome back. It's Kat and Ian, and we're going to tell you about our first trip with our truck camper to the Northeast. July hits, we've been planning out this trip for a long time, and we're ready for 3 weeks on the road. So we loaded the heck out of our camper rig, everything that we could think of, a full cooler and racks for days and all sorts of loaded down and ready for multiple adventure sports and, and with a long list of things to go have fun doing. So we kind of took off and went up to what is Seneca State Forest. Which is a tiny little space kind of near West Virginia's Snowshoe. That was our first big goal stop. So we got a little campground there, made sure everything worked, and so that we could get up early and be right there for the next day.
This was our first night in our truck camper rig, and it went pretty well, I'd say. I thought we were pretty comfortable. It was the first night using the Slumberjack, which was this little tent setup that we have over the back end. And it was just like a quiet little rainy, wet campground. But they had firewood there for us that we could get with a little roller. Yeah, it was a good first night. And they had something called a stump.
Nice little creek and a good old sump.
So if anybody knows what a sump is, let us know in the comments below. It was just like a little stand with a platform on it. Like a sink dump. We don't know.
So then we woke up the next morning, rolled out of there, and we're kind of at Snowshoe right at opening. So we got up there early, first thing in the morning. We had already reserved our tickets. If you book in advance, it's way cheaper. And spent the whole day out there. What?
It's fun.
Riding trails and figuring out what it was all about. And lift assist is pretty awesome.
Yeah, this was my first time at a bike park. I was pretty nervous. I frequently don't think I'm cool enough or rad enough to ride bikes lots of places, but I am. And I had a blast. I thought it was really fun. They had a lot of options for trails that I felt comfortable on, and I rode the whole day. I didn't take a break. I thought I was going to only ride for a while and be done, but something about getting that lift up and only riding down just really gives you a lot of energy.
Yeah, and there are some super gnarly trails. Some black diamonds in bike parks are a little different than black diamonds in other places, so I was sufficiently challenged and tons of trail options to play with. Plenty of air time and plenty of low-key things if you wanted to flow. From there, we kind of boogied out a little north into West Virginia and into Island Campground, which is just like first come, first serve kind of spot. There was some really cool spots out there, and so we just kind of crashed there for a night on our way on up to Pennsylvania, right?
Yeah, mediocre site, nothing fancy. Yeah.
But on our way leaving that site, we did realize there are large swaths of the U.S. that do not have cell service. So that was maybe our biggest thing that we did not quite plan for. We had kind of like pre-made a map and we knew where we were headed, but we didn't plan on pulling out of the campground and then not having service for almost the entire day, the next day of travel through West Virginia, up in some of the more remote regions. We just were shocked to not even be able to download the maps to GPS around. So we had a little wiggle our way on up to the next spot.
Yeah, I would suggest having a physical map with you no matter what. Yeah. Honestly, like road atlases are still prevalent in places where you don't have service.
Totally.
So we do that next time.
So then...
I don't know why I wanted to take... I wanted to take over.
Go, take over. Go.
The next stop I was really excited about because I had found it on Google Maps and it looked really beautiful and kind of in the middle of nowhere, just kind of like a odd random place, like a little local secret maybe. It's Rickets Glen State Park. There's a lake there, a really big campground with lots of sites right on the water. Unfortunately, we didn't get one of those because it books out far in advance, like most campsites do nowadays. Bummer. But it also has access to this 2-mile loop trail, which has 18 waterfalls within 2 miles of hiking. And it was insane. Yeah, it was beautiful. I was really glad to have been there.
Totally. So we had 2 nights there, so we get a little bit comfortable. They had a little lake, and so yeah, we hung out there and found out that one of the canopies we brought had something going on. It was pretty stinky. We're really not sure what happened with that thing, but there were some funky smells coming from it, and we couldn't figure it out. We thought that it was actually our campsite for a while until we left and set it up at our next spot, which was actually up in New York, as we kind of boogied up. And anyways, we determined that that was our canopy was a no-go. Not the Slumberjack. We had a separate canopy to cover any picnic tables we might have stayed at. So anyways, we drove up the coast. No, we didn't. No. We drove on through Pennsylvania and into New York and stayed at Lake Eaton Campground.
This was the first time we got our kayaks out and put them on the water, and it was a beautiful, like, late afternoon, just simple kayak ride. There was nobody else out on the water, mountain views. We loved that campground a lot. I wish we could have gotten a site right on the water so we could just slip in and out on our kayaks whenever we wanted to. But again, you gotta reserve that stuff so far in advance.
So then from there, we scooted across kind of the top of New York and over into Vermont. We pit stopped in Stowe, Vermont, and got to check out. That's a cool little mountain town. Lots of stuff going on. Did a little short hike up in a pretty wild, windy road, and kind of boogied towards our next goal location, which was Kingdom Trails. And that's kind of a small private community in East Burke, but they have a large trail network that a whole bunch of landowners have come together to provide. And you purchase a day pass or 2-day pass and get to bike all of the trails that they keep maintained. And so we stayed at a cute little campground on some lady's property, which was pretty comical, but we had everything we needed, and we were right there by the trails, and got to spend a couple days just scoping them out and seeing what it was all about. I think we had one of those days was your first biggest, like 16-miler or something?
16-mile biking day. I was exhausted.
Yeah, single track.
I was exhausted, but it was worth it. It was just a really cool place to be able to bike so far and have so many trails interconnected that were doable. They were all more cross-country based, but definitely had some difficult spots to them. Fun and fast.
Some jaws at Kingdom Trails in Vermont. Look at this skinny.
Fun and fast. It was a good time. I'm glad we made the most out of the day, but I was very tired. Sometimes we don't pre-plan where we're staying. I am more of a planner and like to do that, and Ian is usually a little more go with the flow. So we like to mix both of those things in with our trips, but it always makes me a little nervous. But I learned in the moment when we were staying in East Burke for Kingdom Trails that sometimes that really can turn out for the best. We had a simple little site just on this piece of property, like Ian said, but we met a really incredible couple that we stayed connected with. And we met another couple from Canada and just had a really beautiful time there, and it all worked out. And so it was a reminder to me to just kind of let go a little bit.
So then we left Vermont and cruised over to Maine, and a little town on the coast called Camden, and actually met her family up there. And so they had reserved 2 campsites, and they bring the little pull behind, and we linked up with them and had our own little campsite, and actually hunkered down there for, I guess, 5 days.
Almost a full week. It was kind of like the pinnacle of our trip, where we were planning on meeting my parents. So we just wanted a rest after, being on the road pretty consistently. And we chose that location mainly because my parents liked it a lot themselves and had been there before, and we wanted to be somewhere close to Acadia National Park, and my parents recommended it. I would say for a young adventure couple, it might not be like the most ideal little town. It's definitely more of an older community. It's cute and nice, but it is more of just like a older, cute town for more like retiree age people, I would say. Mm-hmm. So we might, if we went back, we would maybe choose a different town to stay in to do more adventure style things.
Yeah. I think acted a little more like our breathing space. We kind of every single night setting up and taking down tents and moving and driving hours every day. And it was nice to just pause, know that everything's in good shape, and do day trips out. So we got to hop up to Acadia, we got to hop out to some beaches, we got to go try some lobster and kind of just lobster and kind of boogie around in the Maine area and check out little towns around and such.
Yeah, it was a nice time.
Hi, cutie.
Then it was time to go home and start heading down south again. Where did we go first? We headed down to New Hampshire in the White Mountains. We had seen it on the map and thought that would be a beautiful place to explore. I kind of wish we'd spent a little bit more time there. There's some really rad, really extreme long hikes in that area, but we just didn't really have the time planned to do those. We did one short hike out to some waterfalls though that were really beautiful. We're glad we stopped there. One crazy steep hike like I've never seen in my life. It was really cool. Thankfully, we were hiking down that. And just stayed at another simple campground right there in the area. We had planned on possibly driving up to the top of Mount Washington, which has a road that you can famously drive up to. But when we got there, we realized that it was like $30 or something a person, and it was covered in clouds. It was all socked in, and we didn't think there'd be any way we'd see anything anyways. So we skipped out on that because we're on a budget. And so we moved on and did other fun things.
Yeah, we'll be up northeast. So after that, we drove out of the White Mountains and went to Highland Mountain Bike Park. Pretty famous. We kind of had a debate if we were going to go there or Killington was, I think, the other option. And just kind of with the fame and what we were going to get out of it, we were there on a weekday, so it wasn't slammed or anything. We went down to Highland, and it threatened to rain most of the day. And
it did. It did rain.
And it did rain. But we also ran into a whole bunch of locals to the Asheville area, which was kind of cool. We ran into a little pod of people. There were some YT reps there. And so it was fun to see not necessarily familiar faces, but people who could relate to back home and link up with them and ride with some of those people. And that place is incredible with so many different offerings. Just such a wide range of hard and jumpy and casual and cruisy and oh man.
Yeah. So the difference between Highland and other bike parks is that other bike parks usually have snowboarding and skiing in the winter, but Highland is dedicated to mountain biking, so it was made specifically for that sport.
Yeah.
I had a really good time, and I actually ended up biking longer than Ian because I got stuck on one more run in the pouring rain on the chairlift. It started pouring as I was going up. So it was a blast. I found out that I like bike park biking more than I thought I would. It was cool.
Yeah.
And I think my skills improved a lot from doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Totally helped you grow a ton.
Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah. So then we left Highland and started driving south towards actually my grandparents, and they live in a little town called Saugerties, right out of near Woodstock, New York. And that was our first time indoors in like over 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So we were pretty stoked to get showers and be out of the rain and have a few like modern style amenities, not set up camp for a night. It was like the only night we didn't have to do that whole situation, which is fun, but whew,
yeah,
it was a nice reprieve.
Yeah, I feel like on every trip we do, we plan at least a night where we're like in a hotel or staying with somebody in a house just to have a little breaks. We like that.
Totally, yeah. And from there, we kept on heading south back into Pennsylvania. And this time we actually stopped off at a little town called Reading. We hadn't really planned out where we were going to stop this night and had done some research and saw that Reading had a decent chunk of bike trails pretty close to the town. And so we looked up some state parks in the area that had some camping and made that happen. And it was a pretty interesting bike situation. There were some really cool features, some really interesting built trails, but also kind of like a curious dynamic around there, and they seemed not maintained in some places. It was curious. Just a different scene there than here.
Yeah. There's like nobody on the trails, very overgrown. It was odd. We would not go back there, would we?
Yeah, wouldn't make it a goal.
Probably wouldn't go back there, so we're not like recommending you stop there. Maybe we don't know the good trails there and we skip by, but from what we saw, we would not necessarily go back there again. Yeah, so.
Then we kind of kept boogieing into the last leg of our adventure. We went through what is called the Delaware Water Gap, but on our way to Shenandoah, and we started at the northern edge of the Shenandoah and took our time driving all the way up to a campground that's about midway through the Shenandoah Valley drive, and that was incredible. We started getting beautiful views and tons of mountain spaces, and caught a really cool campsite, or cool campground.
Yeah.
Really well maintained, and access to tons of trails right out from the campground.
Yeah. It was more of a community focused campground, probably the most populated, busy campground we had stayed at. But it was still a different feeling. It's kind of nice to be with other people and hanging out. There were some deer that would like walk through just casually, which is kind of crazy. But it's just a really good spot in the middle of Shenandoah to be close to things.
So we did some really cool hike down to an epic waterfall with some swimming holes, and did some exploring there, and then made it our goal the next morning
to do a sunrise hike, which is my favorite. Everywhere we go, I love to do a sunrise hike. It sucks when you wake up so early and you're like, oh my gosh, the last thing I want to do is get up right now. But when you do it, it's always worth it. So we had the whole place to ourselves for sunrise, and it was probably one of the most memorable, special moments at the very end of our trip, just waking up with the day and being able to reflect on this time that we had together. It was really one of the best trips I felt like we had with how we got along and how much fun we had together. And it was just a really, really special time. So it was nice to end our trip that way. And then after that sunrise, we hiked back down and headed all the way home. And our trip was done. That was it. It was a really good trip.
Yeah.
There are some things we know that you maybe wouldn't input into your trip, such as, going to visit grandparents in Saugerties. But you can always add in your own little personal things if you have friends or family that you would like to visit along the way in those areas. We definitely avoided a lot of the coast itself because big cities like Washington, D.C., New York City, and all of those things are coast bound, and we didn't want to get stuck in that traffic or anything like that. We stayed more inland, and that worked out well. We didn't get stuck in traffic at all the whole time. So we had a really smooth sailing time and had a blast. Yeah. Love you.
Success, love you.
We hope this was helpful for y'all. If you're planning a Northeast road trip and you love mountain biking and hiking and waterfalls and all the adventure things, this would be a great option for you as well.
Yeah, let us know. We're going to do something similar again. There's a lot more to explore. I think we learned that. So if there's somewhere we need to add into our next road trip, please let us know in the comments below. Subscribe for more of our adventure inputs, and
like if you liked this.
We'll see you next time.
Bye.